The Concordat had made first contact with 17 species across their 1,000-year history of space exploration. Each time, they followed the same careful protocol: observation, evaluation, and controlled introduction. Their success rate was perfect, until they met humans. High Commander Saria stood at the observation window of the Concordat's flagship Eternal Dawn, her iridescent scales reflecting the distant starlight as she watched the human fleet approach. They weren't supposed to be here. Not yet. Not for another 50 years, according to their calculations. "Status report," she commanded, her secondary voice box producing the formal tones of leadership, while her primary remained silent, a sign of her unease. First observer Kex manipulated the holographic displays with his 4 upper limbs, while his lower pair maintained his standing position. 17 vessels, High Commander. Their drive signatures match what we observed during the Sol system surveillance. But, he paused, mandibles clicking in confusion. They're more efficient, more refined. They've improved the technology significantly in just 3 years. 3 years. That's how long it had been since the Concordat's advance team had completed their initial survey of human space. 3 years since they had determined that humanity needed at least another 5 decades of development before they would be ready for contact. 3 years since they had departed, leaving behind only a handful of passive observation satellites. Or so they had thought. "Show me the progression," Saria ordered. The main display filled with technical data, comparing human technology from their first observation to now. The advancement curve was impossible, unnatural, unless. "They found one of our probes," she said, the realization settling like a cold stone in her primary stomach. "They didn't just find it. They reversed engineered it." Kex's color patches shifted to acknowledgement bands. "The data suggests exactly that, High Commander. But there's more." He brought up a new set of readings. "Their weapons. They're not just copies of our technology. They've improved them, modified them in ways we never considered." Saria felt her scales tighten against her body, an instinctive response to threat. The humans weren't following the script. Every other species the Concordat had contacted had been overawed by their technological superiority, grateful for the guided introduction to galactic society. But humans had simply helped themselves, taking the Concordat's careful observations and turning them into an advantage. "High Commander," the communications officer called out, her voice carrying the harmonic overtones of urgency. "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Display," Saria commanded, bracing herself for whatever came next. The holographic display shifted, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Her dark skin contrasted sharply with the white of her clothing, and her expression was. Saria struggled to interpret human facial expressions, but she thought she detected amusement. "Greetings, representatives of the Concordat," the human said, her words perfectly translated by systems that shouldn't have known their language. "I am Admiral Helena Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We've been looking forward to meeting you properly." Saria felt her secondary heart skip a beat. They knew the Concordat's name. They knew their language. How much else did they know? "I am High Commander Saria," she responded, keeping her voice steady. "Your presence here is unexpected." Admiral Chen's smile widened slightly. "Yes, I imagine it is. Just as unexpected as finding your observation posts in our system was. Your technology is impressive, by the way. It's taught us a great deal." The casual admission sent ripples of alarm through the command crew. No species had ever been so bold, so direct in their first official contact. "You must understand," Saria began, "our protocols for first contact are designed to protect developing civilizations from the shock of advanced technology and galactic society." Chen interrupted. "Yes, we decoded that from your databases, along with your assessment that we needed another 50 years of development. We disagreed with that timeline." Saria's scales shifted color involuntarily, showing her discomfort. "Admiral Chen, what you've done is unprecedented. The implications. The implications are exactly why we're here, Chen said, her smile fading. Your civilization has been deciding the fate of species for 1,000 years, choosing who gets to join galactic society and when. We're here to inform you that paradigm is about to change. The human raised her hand, and suddenly every sensor on the eternal dawn began screaming warnings. Energy signatures were appearing everywhere, not just from the visible human ships, but from what had appeared to be empty space around them. We brought more than 17 ships, High Commander, Chen said calmly. We've learned that sometimes the best technology is the kind you can't see. Another improvement we made to your designs. Saria stared at the tactical display in disbelief as it showed the true size of the human fleet materializing around them. Not 17 ships, hundreds, and each one incorporating Concordat technology in ways their engineers had never imagined. Now then, Admiral Chen continued, shall we discuss the terms of humanity's entrance into galactic society as equals rather than subjects of your evaluation? Saria looked at the human's unwavering expression, then at the fleet that had managed to completely surround her flagship without being detected. In 1,000 years of first contacts, the Concordat had never faced anything like this. She straightened her posture, her scales shifting to formal diplomatic patterns. Very well, Admiral. It seems we have much to discuss. Chen's smile returned. Yes, we do. Starting with why you really put those observation posts in our system. We've decoded enough of your data to know this wasn't a standard first contact evaluation. You were looking for something specific, something that made you nervous enough to watch us very, very carefully. Saria felt her primary heart nearly stop. They knew. Somehow, they had discovered the real reason for the Concordat's interest in humanity. And now, they had come to demand answers. The game of peaceful observation was over. The age of Concordat's uncontested dominion of first contacts was ending, and humanity had just announced their arrival on the galactic stage in a way that would send shockwaves through every civilized world. High Commander Saria looked at Admiral Chen's waiting expression and made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. You're right, Admiral. There is something we need to discuss. Something we've been searching for across 1,000 years and 17 species. Something we believe humanity might possess. The human's eyes narrowed slightly. We're listening. The conference room aboard the Eternal Dawn hummed with tension. Admiral Chen sat across from High Commander Saria, each leader flanked by their advisors. Through the viewport, both fleets maintained their positions. The Concordat's 17 ships now surrounded by the massive human armada that had emerged from stealth. The entity we seek, Saria began, her scales shifting to deep blues of gravity, first appeared in our historical records 3,000 years ago. We called it the World Ender. Chen's expression remained neutral, but her posture straightened slightly. Elaborate. It was a consciousness, Saria continued, vast and ancient, that moved between stars-consuming civilizations. Not their resources, not their planets, but their minds. Their potential. Their creativity. She paused, her primary voice box producing a sound like distant thunder. We lost 11 worlds to it before we understood what we faced. First observer Kex brought up a holographic display, showing the path of destruction across the galaxy. Entire civilizations had gone silent, leaving behind only empty cities and blank-eyed survivors stripped of something essential. The Concordat was formed in response to this threat, Saria explained. We united our surviving worlds, pooled our knowledge, and prepared for war. But when we finally confronted the World Ender, we discovered a terrible truth. We couldn't harm it. Our weapons, our technology, our strategies, they were all predictable, logical, and utterly useless against something that could simply imagine them out of existence. And you think humanity has something different to offer? Chen asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Saria's scales flickered with confirmation patterns. Your species thinks differently. You take logical systems and use them in illogical ways. You see patterns where there should be none, and break patterns where they should be immutable. When you found our probe, you didn't just understand it. You reimagined it. That's why we were watching you. Not to judge your readiness for galactic society, but to assess your potential as a weapon against something that has haunted us for millennia. Chen was silent for a long moment, studying the alien leader. The world ender hasn't been seen in centuries, has it? That's why you were willing to wait, to watch us develop slowly. Until something changed. Her eyes narrowed. It's back, isn't it? Saria's secondary heart rate increased. These humans were dangerously perceptive. 3 months ago, we lost contact with the Yith Collective. 40 billion minds, gone silent in an instant. The pattern matches. The world ender has awakened, and it's hungry. And now you need us, Chen said, her voice hardening. The species you plan to study like lab rats, the civilization you intended to manipulate into a controlled first contact, suddenly we're essential to your survival. Yes, Saria's admission carried harmonics of both shame and desperation. We need your unpredictability, your capacity for lateral thinking, your ability to. A sharp tone cut through the room. One of Chen's officers handed her a data pad, his face pale. She read it quickly, then looked up at Saria with eyes that had turned to steel. The Yith Collective, she said. Fourth arm of the galaxy, approximately 40,000 light-years from Earth. Saria's scales rippled with surprise. Yes, but how could you know? Because we've been watching them too, Chen interrupted. After we decoded your probe, we found ways to extend our sensor networks far beyond what you thought possible. We've been mapping the galaxy, looking for signs of advanced civilizations, including signs of their disappearance. She placed the data pad on the table, displaying a complex pattern of energy readings. This is from our deep space array. The Yith Collective isn't silent, High Commander. It's screaming. And whatever is causing that scream is moving toward Earth. Saria felt her scales contract in horror. How long? At its current pace? 6 months. Maybe less. Chen's face showed no fear, only a cold determination that Saria found both disturbing and fascinating. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to share everything you know about this world ender. Every encounter, every theory, every failed strategy. In return, we'll show you what humanity does best. And what is that? Saria asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Admiral Chen smiled, but it wasn't the diplomatic smile from earlier. This was something primeval, something that reminded Saria that humans, for all their civilization, were descended from predators. We improvise. We adapt. And when something threatens our existence, the Admiral's smile widened. We get creative. The next 3 months transformed the Concordats' understanding of warfare. The human fleet had withdrawn to Earth, but not before establishing quantum communication links that kept them connected to the eternal dawn. Every day, Saria watched in fascination as humanity processed the Concordats' extensive data on the world ender and responded with ideas that bordered on madness. You want to do what? Saria asked, her scales shifting to patterns of disbelief as she stared at Admiral Chen's latest transmission. We call it cognitive jamming, Chen explained, her holographic form gesturing at a complex diagram. You said the world ender feeds on minds, on creativity and potential. So we'll give it indigestion. First observer Kex clicked his mandibles in confusion. That's not possible. The entity processes consciousness itself. You can't interfere with that. Actually, we can. A new voice joined in. Dr. Sarah Martinez, Earth's leading researcher in synthetic consciousness, stepped into view. We've developed a form of artificial mindscape, a construct of pure thought and creativity that's deliberately unstable. Imagine a work of art that changes its meaning every time you look at it, or a poem that reconstructs itself with each reading. But what purpose would that serve? Saria asked. Think of it like a virus, Chen said, her predatory smile returning. The world ender absorbs consciousness, right? It takes in the patterns of thought and creativity from its victims. But what happens if those patterns are designed to mutate, to become more complex and chaotic with each iteration? Saria felt her primary heart skip a beat as she grasped the concept. You're going to try to overwhelm it. Better than that, Martinez added. We're going to make it choke on its own appetite. The more minds it consumes, the more our cognitive virus will spread through its consciousness, creating an exponential cascade of confusion and chaos. Kex's color patches shifted to warning bands. This is insanity. You're talking about weaponizing consciousness itself. The risks are better than watching 40 billion more minds get wiped clean. Chen cut in. We've already begun manufacturing the delivery systems. We call them dream bombs. The main display showed a new schematic. Devices that looked deceptively simple, barely larger than a human hand. But the energy readings from them were like nothing Saria had ever seen. Each one contains a quantum processor running millions of simultaneous thought experiments, Martinez explained. Poetry that writes itself, art that evolves, music that changes its own fundamental rules, all designed to be as cognitively dense and unstable as possible. And you believe this will harm the world ender? Saria asked. Not directly, Chen said, but it will distract it, confuse it, force it to process so many contradictory patterns that it can't maintain its hold on reality. And while it's struggling with that, she paused, and Saria saw that predatory look again. That's when we hit it with the real weapon. What real weapon? Kex demanded. Chen's hologram flickered as she sent through a new set of data. We've been studying the energy patterns from your records of the world ender. They're complex, but not random. There's a rhythm to them, like a heartbeat or a brainwave. We think we found a way to disrupt that pattern. The display showed a massive construction project taking place in Earth orbit, hundreds of ships working together to build something that defied conventional geometry. We call it the Chaos Engine, Martinez said. It's designed to generate waves of pure quantum uncertainty, creating zones where the normal rules of cause and effect break down, areas where creativity and consciousness can exist in superposition, being everything and nothing simultaneously. Saria's scales turned pale. You're trying to create a weapon that breaks reality itself. No, Chen corrected. We're creating a weapon that breaks the world ender's understanding of reality. It feeds on patterns, on predictability. Even chaos has patterns if you look at it the right way. But true quantum uncertainty, that's something even it won't be able to process. This is madness, Kex whispered. That's exactly the point, Chen said. Your civilization spent 3,000 years trying to fight this thing with logic and reason. But you can't beat a god of consciousness with predictable weapons. Sometimes the only way to win is to change the rules of the game entirely. Saria looked at the humans' impossible plans, their weapons that shouldn't exist, their strategies that bordered on suicidal insanity. And for the first time since learning of the world ender's return, she felt something like hope. How long until these weapons are ready? She asked. The dream bombs are already in production. The Chaos Engine. Chen checked something off screen. 3 more weeks. After that, we'll need to test them somewhere isolated, make sure we can control the effects. You may not have that time. Kex interrupted, his lower limbs trembling as he manipulated the sensor displays. We're detecting new energy patterns from the direction of the Yith Collective. The world ender is moving faster than we predicted. Chen's expression hardened. How much faster? At its current velocity. Kex's color patches paled. It will reach Earth in less than a month. The human admiral was silent for a long moment, then nodded sharply. Well then, I guess we'll be testing these weapons in combat after all. She turned to Saria. High Commander, I hope your people are ready for a fight, because humanity is about to declare war on a god. They felt it before they saw it, a pressure in the mind, a weight that made thinking itself feel like wading through thick mud. The combined fleets of humanity and the Concordat waited in formation around Earth, watching as their sensors detected something massive distorting space itself as it approached. Energy readings are off the scale, Kex reported from the eternal dawn, his voice strained. It's bigger than anything in our records. Through the quantum link, Admiral Chen's voice remained steady. All ships, maintain position. Remember your training. The moment you feel it trying to get into your mind, activate your cognitive shielding. The cognitive shields were another human innovation, a combination of technology and technique that kept each crew member's thoughts focused on simple, repetitive patterns, not enough to draw the world ender's attention, but enough to maintain basic function. And then it appeared. Saria had seen the historical records, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The world ender didn't look like a ship or a creature. It looked like a hole in space, a wound in reality that pulsed with impossible colors and geometries that hurt to look at. Around its edges, reality itself seemed to fray and unravel. By the first light, she whispered, her scales turning pale. It's grown stronger. All ships, execute Phase 1. Chen commanded. Dream bomb squadrons, begin your approach. Hundreds of small, automated vessels broke formation, each carrying dozens of the human-designed consciousness weapons. They accelerated toward the world ender, their paths deliberately erratic and unpredictable. The entity seemed to notice them. A ripple passed through its impossible form, and tendrils of dark energy reached out. Several ships simply vanish, their crews' minds presumably absorbed into the horror's collective consciousness. But the dream bombs had already begun their work. The first wave detonated, releasing their cargo of quantum-engineered chaos into the space around the world ender. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Saria saw it. Distortions in the entity's form, ripples of confusion in its impossible geometry. It's working. Martinez's voice came through the link. The cognitive virus is spreading through its consciousness matrix. Phase 2. Initiate. The Chaos Engine, Earth's ultimate weapon against the unknowable, hummed to life. The massive construction began generating waves of pure quantum uncertainty, creating zones where reality itself became fluid and unpredictable. The world ender reacted violently. Its form writhed and twisted, sending out pulses of energy that made several ships' crews collapse in mental agony despite their shielding. But the human fleet pressed the attack, launching wave after wave of dream bombs, while the Chaos Engine ramped up to full power. Something's wrong, Kex suddenly announced, his color patches flashing warning patterns. The entity, it's adapting. It's learning to process the chaos. Chen's voice remained steady. That's exactly what we wanted. Dr. Martinez, execute final phase. But we haven't fully tested, Martinez began. Do it now. The Chaos Engine's output suddenly changed. Instead of generating waves of uncertainty, it began pulling them in, creating a singularity of pure cognitive chaos. The dream bomb's effects, the world ender's own reality warping field, all of it began to spiral toward a single point in space. What are you doing? Saria demanded. Fighting fire with fire, Chen explained. The world ender feeds on consciousness, on creativity and potential. So we're giving it everything, all at once. Every possible thought, every possible reality, every possible version of existence compressed into a single point. The entity's form began to distort, drawn inexorably toward the Chaos Engine's singularity. Its impossible geometries stretched and warped as it fought against the pull. Full power to quantum containment, Martinez shouted. We have to hold it. The combined fleets watched in awe and terror as the world ender, the ancient horror that had haunted the galaxy for millennia, was slowly but surely drawn into humanity's trap. Its form compressed, collapsed, twisted in ways that defied comprehension. And then, with a silent explosion that rippled through every mind in the fleet, it vanished. Warning klaxons blared throughout the ships. Quantum surge detected, Kex announced. The Chaos Engine is overloading. Cut power, Chen ordered. All ships, Emergency withdrawal. The fleets pulled back as the Chaos Engine began to break apart, its impossible energies dispersing into space. Where the world ender had been, there was now only empty void. But somehow, it felt cleaner, more natural than the wound in reality that had been there before. Did we? Saria's voice trembled. Did we destroy it? No, Martine's replied, her voice tired but satisfied. We did something better. We gave it exactly what it wanted, an infinite feast of consciousness and creativity, all at once. Too much for even it to process. It's not destroyed, it's digesting. And it will be for a very, very long time. Saria looked at the empty space where the ancient horror had been, then at the readings showing the Chaos Engine's deterioration. You knew this would happen. That's why you didn't finish testing it. We knew it was a one-shot weapon, Chen confirmed. But sometimes, that's all you need. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, High Commander Saria stood before the Concordat High Council, her scales shimmering with the formal patterns of a historical declaration. The vast chamber was filled with representatives from every spacefaring civilization in known space, and for the first time in history, a human delegation stood among them. The threat we called the world ender is gone, Saria announced, her voice carrying harmonics of both triumph and humility. Not destroyed, but contained in a way that will keep it dormant for millennia to come. And we owe this victory not to our own technology or wisdom, but to the creativity and courage of humanity. Admiral Chen sat with her team, watching the proceedings with that same quiet intensity that Saria had come to recognize as uniquely human. The Admiral's dress uniform bore a new insignia, a combined symbol of Earth and the Concordat, marking her as the first human to hold the rank of Joint Fleet Commander. But this victory has taught us something more important than tactical superiority. Saria continued. For 3,000 years, the Concordat has approached the galaxy with the assumption that our way, the way of careful observation, controlled introduction, and measured progress, was the only safe path forward. We were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Such an admission from a high commander was unprecedented. Humanity showed us that true strength lies not in perfecting a single approach, but in being willing to imagine entirely new ones. They took our technology and reimagined it in ways we never considered. They faced a threat we had feared for millennia, and devised a solution that none of us could have conceived. She gestured to the human delegation. And they did this not because they were more advanced, but because they think differently. They see patterns we miss and break patterns we assume are fixed. They turn limitations into advantages and impossibilities into opportunities. The display behind her showed footage from the battle, the dream bombs releasing their cargo of engineered chaos, the Chaos Engine performing its impossible feat of quantum manipulation, the moment when the world ender vanished into its own infinite feast. Therefore, I propose a fundamental change to how the Concordat operates. No more hidden observation posts. No more arbitrary judgments about which civilizations are ready for contact. Instead, we will create a new framework for galactic cooperation, one that recognizes that every species, no matter their level of technological advancement, may possess unique insights and abilities that could benefit us all. The chamber erupted in discussion, countless voices, and harmonic patterns filling the air. Saria raised her primary appendages for silence. The human concept of mutual defense, what they call having each other's backs, will become the foundation of this new framework. Every civilization, from the most ancient to the newly spacefaring, will have a voice in our collective future. She turned to Admiral Chen. Humanity's first official act as part of the Concordat was to save us all from a threat we thought unbeatable. Not because they had to, but because they could. This is the spirit we must embrace moving forward. Chen stood, her expression serious, but with that hint of a smile that Saria had learned meant she was pleased. Earth accepts this proposal, High Commander, but we have one condition. Name it, Saria replied. The Chaos Engine wasn't our only breakthrough. The quantum communication technology, the cognitive shielding, the dream bomb concepts. They all have peaceful applications, applications that could revolutionize everything from space travel to medical treatment. We want to share these innovations, but we want to do it through collaborative research teams, not just technology transfers. Seria's scales shifted to patterns of approval. You want to teach us how to think differently, not just use your inventions. Exactly. Because the next threat we face might not be something we can fight with weapons, no matter how creative they are. But if we combine humanity's capacity for lateral thinking with the Concordats' vast knowledge and resources. Chen's smile widened. Well, let's just say the world ender might be the last cosmic horror that ever makes the mistake of threatening this galaxy. The council chamber filled with sounds of agreement. Species that had never worked together began forming impromptu discussion groups, sharing ideas and possibilities. Saria watched as 3,000 years of careful protocol and measured progress gave way to something new, something more chaotic, perhaps, but also more vital and alive. You know, Chen said quietly, standing beside her, when we first decoded your probe, we thought we caught you spying on us. We had no idea we'd end up here. Saria's scales rippled with amusement, and we had no idea that by watching humanity, we were actually watching our own salvation unfold. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson in all of this, that the future belongs not to those who plan it most carefully, but to those who can imagine it most boldly. Above them, through the council chamber's transparent dome, the stars shone with new promise. Somewhere out there, the world ender dreamed its infinite dreams, trapped in a feast of consciousness from which it might never wake. But here, in this room, a new kind of consciousness was being born, one that combined the wisdom of age with the audacity of youth, the power of knowledge with the strength of imagination. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Saria realized, was exactly what it needed.